This is Patrick Henningsen, and you're listening to On the QT at 21wire.tv.
Accessing confidential data.
I'm Patrick Henningsen. Thank you for joining us for this episode of On the QT, episode 5, On the QT at 21wire.tv. And this first 30 minutes of this podcast will be free and free to listen, free to download. And the final hour after the break will be for 21wire.tv members and subscribers only. So if you like the show and you want to support our work, do subscribe to 21wire.tv and become a member. There's a lot of great content, not just audio, but also video, premium video content, and a number of other special shows up there that we share with our members here at 21wire.tv. And this has been quite a busy first couple of days to this week, and we'll just crack right into some of the main stories. We'll give you a little overview of the news in the first half hour, and then in the final hour, for the members' side, we're going to break into some of the real details of the so-called Russian hack of the American Democratic and Republican committees. This is what the media in the United States is claiming. This is what CNN is running as a story. And a number of other high-ranking politicians in Washington are pushing this, which looks like they're mainstreaming conspiracy theories in the United States now. So it's not possible that it was an inside job, or not possible that maybe someone from another party hacked the other person's server to leak some very embarrassing emails. Of course, that would never happen in the United States. Instead, it seems like there's a sort of concerted effort. The choir is singing, blame the Russians, blame Putin. Why would Russia do it? Well, because they're Russians and because Putin's an evil dictator. End of discussion. So we'll break some of the details of that. It's quite an extraordinary story, and the media coverage is, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's one of those stories where you think to yourself, there's no way that they'll try to go mainstream with this. It's so ridiculous. And at no point along the line has anyone offered any evidence, or has there ever been an official statement from the White House, let's say, to confirm this. And of course, no evidence is ever presented, but the media run with it. And so when all the networks run with the same story, the end result is, sadly anyway, that the majority, or quite a large portion of the American people, will believe that this conspiracy theory, which is posited by the mainstream, by the way, mainstream politicians and also mainstream media, that they'll believe that this is somehow true, or that it's probably true. And in America, that's quite an important concept. Probably true. There is no such thing as true in America. There's probably not true and probably true. There is no true or false. It's that's gone right out the window. In recent years. We're living in a very strange reality right now. So we're going to break that down. I've got some details and also some clips, which I'm going to analyze from the ranking chairperson of the Department of Homeland Security, the person who basically injected this conspiracy theory into the media. So some of you probably say it's ridiculous, but let me tell you, it might be ridiculous, but they're using this to leverage and to manipulate the electorate in a very close presidential election right now in the United States. And in the past episode of On the QT, we discussed and we looked at the statements from Julian Assange from WikiLeaks, and his role and WikiLeaks' role in the outcome of the U.S. elections and how important that is. Also, more importantly, we talked about the motivation behind it. Why would Julian Assange have that much skin in the game, let's say, with regards to a U.S. election? Does he have a personal stake in it? Of course, we showed you last week on episode 4 what is Julian Assange's personal stake in the outcome of this U.S. election. I think when you look at it from that perspective, things tend to make a little more sense. But nonetheless, these are real communications. Some of these that have been leaked, have been hacked or leaked. We don't know which, but they're real. And they brought up some very interesting issues. Let's just get started with some of the things that came out. It's pretty incredible. The damning information that's been leaked. You've also got a tranche of emails that were from Hillary Clinton's missing emails that were erased or were in the FBI cache with regards to Hillary Clinton's email server investigation. That Hillary Clinton was on, her staff was searching for medication to treat Parkinson's. Of course, this feeds into the another major event that happened on September 11th, where Hillary Clinton fainted and had to be carried and into her Scooby van and basically sent off to who knows where, I guess her daughter's house and not the hospital. Quite a serious incident, and it's brought up huge health questions which are being discussed ad nauseum right now in the media. And of course, this has also triggered the more liberal left-wing media and sort of the Clinton supporting networks like MSNBC and CNN to basically distract and put all the focus on Donald Trump's health, even though it's Hillary Clinton who basically collapsed in public, which is quite a serious thing. So we see clues to perhaps past medical conditions in some of these email leaks, and also an admission by Bill Clinton, her husband, on national TV that somehow, for some reason, Bill let slip that this has happened a few times before. So we have a sort of health issue with Hillary Clinton, which is quite worrisome for anybody, especially if you're running for president. And the Clinton camp is calling this pneumonia, but this doesn't seem to fit what happened. So what more likely is the case, and what seems to be the case, I think any real doctor who's looking at this story might say that this is a chronic cerebrovascular condition. So, or a combination with a neurological issue. And this is quite a serious thing for anybody, and it's something that it's a serious health thing. She's had issues of blood clots before, passing out, fainting. This is really scary. So you would be, if you're a Hillary Clinton family member or supporter, you should be really concerned about this. If you're an American voter, you're obviously should be concerned as well. If this is the president and she's got this sort of a health issue, is this going to be a good thing if she's elected president? That has to be looked at and considered quite closely. So, but as expected, the media is fobbing it off, and is the other tranche of emails that's come out. And this has been given to a group called DC Leaks, which has been known to leak various things. We don't know if it was hacked or leaked. Of course, the media is saying it was hacked by the Russians. What it was incredibly damning commentary by Colin Powell, former U.S. Secretary of State, former General, Defense Secretary, head of the First Gulf War. So Colin Powell, who was Secretary of State under George Bush, he basically let his feelings be known in private emails about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And clearly, he doesn't like either. But let's look at what he said about Hillary Clinton in the first email. This came out, I think, via the New York Post first. But basically, this is Colin Powell doesn't have many good things to say about either candidate. And so with regards to Hillary Clinton, and by the way, Colin Powell's a Republican, but he normally votes Democrat. He did vote for Obama in the last two elections. And he says, of Hillary Clinton, he said, this is a 70-year-old person, so I would rather not have to vote for her. Although she's a friend I respect, but she's a 70-year-old person with a long track record, unbridled ambition, greedy, not transformational, and with a husband that is still blanking, and that's censored out. You can imagine it's a lurid term to describe casual, leisurely sexual activity by Bill Clinton. And so Colin Powell's saying, with a husband that's blanking bimbos at home, and this is according to the New York Post. So that's going to have some effect on the Clinton brand, obviously, which they're trying to always rehabilitate constantly. So that's interesting. So Colin Powell's just basically lashing back at Hillary Clinton for throwing him into the email scandal, basically. The Clinton staffers and the campaign basically said Colin Powell did the same thing when she was blamed for the email scandal, tried to throw Colin Powell under the bus and say he did the same thing and drag him into this conversation. Of course, he had a lot to say about that as well in these emails. So that's kind of interesting. But we'll get into the Russian hacking, the truth behind the Russian hacking in the second part of this podcast. And just to look at another couple of stories that came in this week that I think are worth looking at. This is a feel-good story, and you don't often get these in the news. Whether it amounts to anything is another matter. But in terms of a feel-good story, it's always good to be able to sit back and for people to smile. And when you read this headline, you might smile. French court sets date for IMF chief Christine Lagarde's trial. Now that's going to make a lot of people smile and be happy and know that maybe there is some hope in the world that a high-level banker might actually get convicted one day, perhaps. This is always a hope. We haven't really seen anything like this since the savings and loan scandal in the 80s, when Ivan Boesky and Michael Milken and some of these characters managed to do a little bit of bird, although in a country club, of course, type prison setting, but nonetheless did some time. So to see Christine Lagarde tried for some kind of a major fraud case is a good thing, many people would think. International Monetary Fund chief Christine Lagarde, who has a permanent, she's famous for her permatan. That if you look at Christine Lagarde's permatan, would definitely give Donald Trump a run for his money in that department. So she will stand trial for her role in a 400 million euro payout as French finance minister in 2008 to businessmen. This is a lot of money, by the way, 400 million. Not bad. So she made that payout in 2008. This is at the height of the housing crash, to Bernard Tapie, a French court said on Monday. So France's highest appeals court rejected her appeal by Lagarde against the judge's order. Wow. In December, for her to stand trial at the Court de Justice de République, a special court that tries ministers for crimes in office. So she will show up. What will happen to her, I don't know. But you have to also, a little footnote here, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, also French, also former head, IMF head or World Bank head. He also went down, but in a slightly different sort of trial setting to do with philandering in a New York hotel room with a maid, forcing himself upon one of the staff. But if you really look at that story and you look behind that, that seemed to me like a sort of convenient obstacle that was placed in the career of Mr. Strauss-Kahn, and he also was targeted. Maybe Christine Lagarde's a force for good, but you know, when you see the IMF and the damage that it does to so many countries, especially so-called developing countries, or what used to be called the third world, but that's not politically correct anymore, so we can't say third world, we say the developing world. The damage that the IMF does, the predatory lending, the restructuring, forced restructuring programs that it forces on these countries to basically cut back on it, all social services, and infrastructure spending in order to meet the interest repayments back to the fat cats up in Europe and the United States at the International Monetary Fund. Wow, they should call it the International Debt Fund. Should be called the IDF, but then they'd be competing with Israel, wouldn't they? So they can't really call it the IMF, International Debt Fund. No, I'm not sure what we would call that organization. But Lagarde, could she do time? It's doubtful. People at that level generally don't, and that's pretty high. She's quite high up on the food chain in the worlds of high finance. Here's an interesting story, and I thought I'd just run through this. The United States has confirmed a groundbreaking defense pact and agreement with the state of Israel. So United States is looking at a 10-year deal worth $38 billion per year of military aid to the nation of Israel. So that averages out to about $3.8 billion a year. It's a slight raise from the past military aid packages that Israel's been receiving for many, many decades from the United States. But see, in the past, and the United States gives military aid to any country that it wants to control. So this first biggest, the top recipient in the world per annum is Israel. I believe number 2 is Egypt. Okay, so that's having some control over both Israel and Egypt, two neighbors there, former warring factions, no longer in the Middle East. Number 3, military aid, I would say, is Colombia. Colombia is the 3rd largest recipient of U.S. military aid. What does that entail? It entails Uncle Sam shows up with a checkbook and basically gives them money, but it's a voucher, and they have to spend that money with U.S. firms and defense contractors. That's pretty much for all aid, by the way, not just military aid. This is called tied aid, as in tied to the United States. You must spend the money. So it's like I would go out, you'd be out on the street, you didn't have any money, I give you a gift certificate which has Uncle Sam's picture on it, and you can buy anything you want in my shop for the amount redeemable on that gift certificate, but you have to buy it in my shop, otherwise it's not worth anything anywhere else. However, Israel has had special dispensation, as one might expect, that it's the only country in the world that doesn't have to spend all of its money with Shop Uncle Sam in the USA. It goes out and will buy its arms and weapons from anybody it wants, from Russia, from Britain, from France, whoever. Okay, now that's been their prerogative, and of course they drive a really hard bargain, as you can see. They managed to suck off $3.8 billion a year in welfare from the United States to pay for all their expensive weaponry. So, but yes, this is the way Washington keeps its hand in affairs. Okay, so Israel wants to continue this, so they've done a deal with the U.S. and they basically said, well, we'll spend the money in the USA now. We'll be like the rest of the countries, like Egypt and Colombia and all the other ones, Indonesia and whoever else you give military. We'll spend it with Uncle Sam, but you got to give us more in return. So they did. They raised the amount and they guaranteed it for 10 years. So, you know, you'd think that I've always been told how savvy Israeli businessmen are and how good they are in business and making money, but they can't be that good if they're on the dole with the United States. So, again, this is a subsidized country, Israel. So, what would happen if it had to pay for all its own kit? That would be an interesting proposition. So that's happening in Israel. Someone sent us a message when we posted something about this story, and they said, well, what about the Greater Israel Project? And my reply was quite simple. What about it? The Greater Israel Project is already done and dusted. The Greater Israel stretches from New York City to Los Angeles, if you didn't know already. So, and this is a segue to an interesting article on Counterpunch website and has Israel effectively colonized the United States. And the author, Barudin Khan, actually makes an interesting. By the way, I don't like this website's view on Syria. They're very pro-regime change for some reason. So along the George Soros talking point, but generally on issues of Israel, they're pretty pro-Palestinian, pretty anti-Israeli occupation and colonialism. So they make a good argument here. Is back in the old days when Britain colonized all these countries like India and so forth. It then would commandeer the military of all these countries and have them fight for Britain anywhere in the world, be deployed, the various brigades. So basically all these little countries, these colonial possessions, are fighting on behalf of Great Britain. And if you look at the United States and its foreign policy, and especially in the last 20 years, 25 years, basically everything that it's done, every position that it's taken has been at the behest of Israel. So very much, so the United States is acting like a colonial possession of Israel in a way, and it is. One could make the argument this is a case of the tail wagging the dog. Small country, but Israel has nukes. They've got nuclear weapons. They obviously don't want anyone else to have them in the region, but they've got them. And they probably wield that stick in the background in negotiations on the red line, the red telephone. I'm sure threats have been made to the effect of what they call the mad dog tactic with regards to geopolitical diplomacy. Israel always reserves the right to pull the mad dog card. Obviously, they've got the nukes. So why is the United States controlling U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East? Israel is controlling U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. And the two countries do have similar goals. Yes, it's true in that respect, or at least the political elite do. I don't know about the people. In fact, I don't think the people do. But this is the problem. There's a lot of money involved in this relationship. The American IPAC, Israeli Political Action Committee, has spread quite a lot of money around every year, every election, congressmen, senators, presidents, even to state assemblies in some cases. So there's IPAC, Israeli lobby money everywhere. There's a number of these lobbies. And they like to keep control of the Christian Zionists in the United States. There's many of them. One of them is actually our man in Texas. His name is Michael McCaul, and he is chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. He's the one that injected the rumor that Russia hacked the RNC this week. And that Russia is targeting U.S. election infrastructures and will hack and try to influence the outcome of the U.S. election. Okay, so he's the one. And if you look at his homepage, and we're here on his congressman's website, nice picture of Michael McCauley there. I saw this guy on TV, and he's not very impressive in terms of his grasp of anything. Probably outside of Texas, but this is pretty much par for the course for most Republicans and Democrats in Washington, although Democrats seem to be slightly more in tune generally with foreign affairs, but I'm not giving too much slack there, although John Kerry speaks multiple languages and can do deals and so forth. They're not much better. In fact, the Democrats are a little bit more devious than the Republicans. The Republicans are just completely clueless, generally. So they at least have the excuse of a genuine excuse of ignorance, whereas the Democrats are a little more devious. They use their left liberal cover in order to execute dirty wars and covert wars like we're seeing in Syria right now. So that's what John Kerry's doing right now. So here's Michael McCaul, okay, and this is straight off his bio. First paragraph. As chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, my top priorities are to address the Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah terrorist threat, border security, cybersecurity, and fixing the Department of Homeland Security to ensure that it's capable of carrying out its core mission, protecting the homeland, the Vaterland, as Hitler called it, Vaterland, homeland. This, by the way, in America, we didn't use this term before 2002. I'm just going to let people know, before the year 2002, we did not use the term homeland. This was injected into the American lexicon by design, by the political elite, by the military establishment and the military-industrial defense complex. Okay, this is designed to militarize the United States and to put it into a military mindset. It did not exist. It was never used before 2002. Okay, important to note. Okay, so whenever people use the word homeland, it's intentional. It's a loaded term, and it's used to basically reframe how Americans view themselves and their place in the world. And a lot of this is based on complete hot air. Case in point, he says his main priority is to protect the U.S. from Al-Qaeda Hezbollah threat. Hezbollah doesn't threaten the United States. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a Hezbollah terrorist event anytime in the last 20 years. It'd be very difficult, although they're called terrorists and they're attacked for repelling or standing up to Israeli occupations in places like Lebanon, for instance. And they do tend to take the side of the Palestinians, who are getting crushed since the creation of the State of Israel, been getting crushed as a people. So Hezbollah, and they're based in South Lebanon. And so they're not going to attack the United States. That's pretty certain. Their mission is pretty clear. It's to protect Lebanon from the Israelis, essentially, and also to repel. They're fighting ISIS in Syria. How about that? Hezbollah is fighting ISIS. They're fighting Al-Nusra Front, Al-Qaeda. So here we have this Texas congressman, head of the Homeland Security Committee, and he's got this nonsensical, ridiculous statement on the bio on his website. And you have to then question, A, the intelligence of this person, or is he trying to be deceptive intentionally here by writing that down because the Israeli lobby who writes out his check told him to insert that on the website? It's very difficult to tell sometimes, but this is the way politics is in America. Things are often difficult to decipher. So we can get in a little bit more into this gentleman and the veracity of the so-called Russian hacks, and basically we'll obliterate this conspiracy theory that's been floated by the U.S. political establishment and the mainstream media in order to distract from the complete, what seems to be the total meltdown of the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign. That's what it looks like anyway from a bird's eye view, but we might be wrong, of course. There's always that possibility. No one's perfect, but it sure looks like it. The Russians are hacking the U.S. elections, really. That's interesting. So we're going to join you on the other side, hopefully, on the second part of this podcast, which is for subscribers and members at 21wired.tv. If you want to support us and you like what we do, you believe in what we do, do click on the link available to support us, to subscribe. We definitely need your support. Some great programs, by the way, that we're working on always and producing for our members. So I'm Patrick Henningsen. I'm your host on the QT. We'll see you on the other side after this break.